In the past few months, I've noticed that there's been a severe awareness increase towards the LARP epidemic. Within several fandoms, it's quite noticeable, and given that the Netflix DMC show recently explored DMC2's content, some of it quite well and some not well, people have been talking about this game again. And some of the things I read out there, and this gospel the internet has been spreading for so many years, makes me think that people didn't quite try to play DMC2 either. The game is known for its flaws, like being too easy, straight up bad enemy design, empty levels, the list goes on. The negativity surrounding this game was and still is off the charts. Making fun of DMC2 is a popular thing to do, and I'm not saying people LARP DMC2, but I believe people make their own experience worse with this game by willingly playing it as the internet labeled it, just holding down the shoot button, without ever exploring the nuances this game has in its combat system, or realizing how influential this game was to the franchise as a whole, even if in fact the game isn't great. Who am I kidding, it's dog shit, but whatever. Bearing what little good or cool thing this game has to offer with their negativity. So today, I want to dive into DMC2's combat mechanics, explain things that go unexplained by reviews, and its actual problems which lead people to primarily use guns. Starting with Dante's moveset, it's completely different from DMC1. I don't know why, but it is. Instead of doing pause combo strings, this game wants you to use the analog stick during different slashes to do different strings. The same applies to Lucia. Problem is, you can't lock onto an enemy or you'll either do the stinger or a high time, which means you have to rely on the auto lock on, which is terrible in this game. The game does give you a button to override lock on, which is very roundabout when they could have just made a manual one, something Ocarina of Time already had done years prior. However, the way combo strings work in this game is not as intuitive as it sounds. It takes some getting used to, and it's definitely not ideal, but it works. Sometimes. You can also perform a tackle by pressing lock on and melee button upon landing. And on his devil trigger form he gets different strings, including trillion stabs. Now here's the combat's actual main problem. And no, it's not the guns. Unlike DMC1, you can't dodge cancel between attacks. You can special cancel into high time or stinger at any time during the string, but not dodge. And that wouldn't be a problem if the recovery of almost all of Dante's strings weren't extremely long, in a game where bosses and enemies alike barely get stunned by standard attacks. So you have to play this game committing to every one of your hits, sort of like a Souls game, or you'll just get hit. Dante has a single string that is fast with little recovery where he can use in most openings. But of course, when you first play it, you're not going to be aware of it. And I believe that's where the myth of guns being the best option for combat comes from. Besides the fact that guns can juggle and keep enemies stunned on their own, I believe it's because the combat has to be played in such a different manner that players feel like they can't attack because of the excessive recovery on strings. They try to exploit an opening and they end up getting hit, deciding instead that it's best to keep their distance and shoot because guns will get the job done with how much damage they do, even though they deal less DPS than melee. Guns are strong and sometimes it's required to just shoot, but they're not the best option for combat. And to prove my point, I'll take inspiration from this Twitter post I saw some time ago, where the player found a dead zone where the boss can't hit him, so he can just sit there and shoot. But what if I told you the same can be replicated in DMC3 against Cerberus? On normal difficulty, you can easily beat this poor dog with level 1 guns. And he also has a dead zone of his own, where he'll whiff all of his attacks besides 2 very easy to dodge ones. This fight becomes a literal dog walk. But instead, I could be doing this, and actually have fun instead of mashing a single button. It's a choice, and the DMC2 is no different. It has wildly different mechanics, but follows the same rule. The game gives you the tools, but how you get the job done is totally up to you. It just so happens that in DMC2, you can do this far more often on its normal difficulty and never get punished for it. Moving on to Dante's gunplay, it's the very bones of what became the gunslinger style in later games. You can shoot different enemies at the same time, brainstorm, and even with the shotgun equipped, you can use ebony to shoot someone else. And the shotgun will be the main point of attraction because you can actually do special moves with the shotgun. While locked on, you can do Dante's standard string, and in between aiming with hits, press the shoot button to perform different shotgun follow-ups. One of them is particularly effective against Orangera, stunning him every time even on hard mode. However, these attacks also suffer from obscenely long recovery, but they do have their situational uses like the one I just mentioned. It's a cool concept. And FYI, none of these special moves are ever explained in game, just hidden mechanics the game refused to make their existence known. Onto the main attraction of playing Dante, which is also a feature that is never explained, Majin Devil Trigger. You like Sin Devil Trigger from the DMC5? Well, the DMC2 did it first, and it's a far more powerful version in comparison. Once your health bar goes under a certain threshold, it turns red. If you activate Devil Trigger, Dante turns into this invincible demon form, and this form alone can destroy every boss. This means that upgrading your health is pretty much a liability when playing as Dante. Once your Devil Trigger runs out, you will heal just a sliver of your health, so you'll die in the next hit you take. Intelligently designed so you can't activate Majin again unless you heal and build more Devil Trigger. However, you can extend your Majin Devil Trigger duration with Devil Stars. Majin has secret special moves as well. By pressing the melee and shoot button at the same time, you'll perform an area of effect attack that does massive damage. And if you do the same input while locked on, you'll perform a concentrated beam that deletes anyone's health bar in seconds. However, after performing either of these attacks, Dante will turn back to normal. This feature is what makes the DMC2 a great speedrun game, as it revolves around finding ways to set up Majin before the boss. However, as cool and fun as this mechanic is, it doesn't make up for all the problems Dante has in this game. Now what if I told you the game itself has a fix to all of these problems? The game has a hard mode, and while not exactly hard, it greatly improves how you interact with enemies. It feels like what the standard difficulty should have been. If you beat hard mode, you will unlock the solution to all of your problems. A third playable character, Trish. Trish wields the Sparta alongside nearly all of Dante's moves from DMC1, with the exact same properties in most of them, which means pause strings are back. She can dodge cancel, she has round trip, some hand-to-hand moves, and in true female Wesker fashion she puts her sunglasses on when Devil Trigger is active. In my opinion, Trish makes the game far more enjoyable to play through, in spite of the poorly designed enemies, just by mitigating the flaws of Dante's moveset. And the best thing is, she is also playable in Lucia's campaign, so you can just play through the whole game as if it were a DMC1 DLC. As for Lucia, she is by far the better designed character in this game. Mechanically, she works just like Dante, but the first hits of her string are fast enough that you can react to what enemies are doing and dodge without the recovery making much of a difference. She has extremely long strings that, like Dante, can be cancelled at any time into her version of Stinger, which is a cartwheel kick, and High Time. Her version of Tackle is a spinning kick that works decently well, and instead of guns, she has access to throwing knives and grenades. Now for the single best thing she has to offer, her airstring. I didn't talk about Dante's because just look at it, it's terrible. Usable, but terrible. It'll whiff a lot of times and you can't do it close to the ground, but Lucia has two of them, and her airstrings not only rarely whiff, one of them can be done instantly off the ground, which allows for it to be used in different ways and much more frequently. And it also happens to be her best form of movement. She can literally fly with it. Lucia doesn't possess a Majin double trigger of her own, but she does have two special moves just like Majin does. By pressing the melee and shoot button at the same time, she does this mid-range ground projectile. By doing the same while flying, she'll do this rainstorm of light just like the Spare Embodied, but way stronger. All of what I just mentioned makes her the most complete character in this game, allowing for more freedom of expression than with Dante, which makes her campaign far more bearable in comparison, and she's just fun to mess around with. Before I move on to the next few things I want to talk about, every single one of these mechanics I've explained are hidden from the player. You have to play and figure them out for yourself. The majority of people who played this game in the past probably didn't even know some of these moves existed, that they had more options than just spamming the shoot button, that there was more nuance to the combat than meets the eye. And it's not their fault, the game never explains any of this. And so this lack of game knowledge plus everything else that makes the game extremely mid makes for a pretty distasteful experience, and it doesn't help that the main character is by far the most bare bones of them. Starting with Orangera, the very first boss on Dante's campaign, and it's one of the better designed ones. His moves are all very simple and he has a projectile. It's a decent introduction boss so you can learn to dodge and pick when to attack, or to just stay back and shoot. Like I've mentioned before, this boss has a particular weakness to a shotgun special move on normal and hard difficulties. And most people are unaware of this, but you can cut its arm off, changing the way it fights. Main problems are that 1. Sometimes this damned monkey will jump out of your field of vision, and it's a 50-50. He can either instantly stomp you, or hang on the roof before stomping you. You can see his shadow, which helps to dodge, but the camera won't let you see his shadow every time either. And 2, at some point in the fight, he'll start calling his minions, which means the auto lock-on will become a problem given that the boss can go out of your field of vision. While it's a very trivial thing on both normal and hard, on Dante Must Die it's quite annoying to deal with, but you could just one-shot him with Majin. Overall, it's a sick boss for this game's standards. Infested Chopper, this game's known war criminal for requiring you to just shoot and being the worst boss in the game. I'm sad to inform you that statement's actually a lie. I'll explain in a bit. First off, this boss has a banger soundtrack. And the concept of fighting demon-infected military weaponry going around from rooftop to rooftop in a chase sounds sick. Unfortunately, it's poorly executed, but whatever. This boss is actually kind of intelligently designed. Before fighting it, you'll face infested tanks. What you're meant to learn from them is that they have a weak spot. Hitting them in the eye will do a lot more damage. The same applies to the chopper. It has an eye on its side, and if you hit it, it'll take a lot more damage, and you can alternate between shooting it and hitting it in the eye with Devil Trigger when using the aerial heart. Or you could just use Majin. This boss is indeed bad, it barely even attacks you, but trust me, it's not the worst. Nephasturus. This boss is fucking sick. You are legitimately fighting a demon-infested skyscraper whose name literally translates to Tower of Sin. Not only does it look and sound cool, it's also one of the better designed fights in the game, in spite of its first phase being a wall boss. He always does the same sequence of moves, and that allows you to get some hits in its head when using the aerial heart. At some point, he'll start spawning bats from his hands called Nephas Vermis, Worms of Sin. Once you beat the wall boss first phase, you'll be left with only its head, Nephas Capitas, Head of Sin. And it becomes a back and forth fight where the seventh head is trying to shoot you while you catch up to it to hit it in the spinal cord. This boss also gets some new moves on higher difficulties based on Griffin's electricity from DMC1. It's a fun fight, and visually speaking, probably the coolest boss in the game. Furiataurus. On normal, he's an absolute joke. So long you keep your distance, he'll loop the same attack and you can just shoot him dead. But on hard mode, where Dante must die, his whirlwind is far stronger, forcing you to get close to him. His moves are faster and various attacks have to be dodged differently. It's a fun back and forth fight, and he has long enough openings where you can get to use all of Dante's mechanics to their fullest. You've probably noticed a pattern here. Most bosses have substantial changes in some form in every difficulty or given a particular circumstance, getting changes in behavior and new moves, including Devil Trigger on must-die difficulties like in every other game, which is a good design choice for any game that hopes to be replayable. And visually, this game has tons of new concepts as well, thanks to the work of Daigo Ikeno, who was the character designer for this game. If there's one thing the internet agrees about this game, is that Dante looks really cool. His Devil Trigger is no different. It reminds me of Virgil a bit. Ebony and Ivory morph into his hands and turn into 6-barrel machine guns, which is cool when you think about the sentimental value Dante has for those guns, to the point where they become part of him. Definitely accidental, but I like it. I'd also like to mention that the costumes in this game are pretty cool. Collabing with an actual clothing brand is an interesting thing for sure. If you ask me, it's much better than the silly recolors we got in the latest entry of the series, when every single character besides V has had several costumes in the past that could have been added. But whatever. Anyway, going back to the bosses. Some are good, some are bad, some are okay. So I want to talk about the contenders for worst and best ones in the game. For worst, it's definitely either Nacht Baron or Tateo Bisu. The fight with Nacht Baron starts with you getting sucked into the Shadow Realm, where Dante finds himself in Shin Megami Tensei 3 featuring Dante from the Devil May Cry series, and oh my god, he looks so cool, his personality is back in it. Nacht Baron. This guy doesn't even fight back, and drops larvae all fight long. It keeps flying out of aerial heart range, so it's hard to hit it, and using Majin isn't recommended because the fastest way to deal with the larvae after the fight is to get Gulped and destroy them from the inside. Then we have Tateo Bisu, who's a fish, underwater, where your only weapons are a bow gun and grenades. And the fish goes invisible, so you can't lock onto it. However, if you bait the boss to charge at a pillar, the invisibility will stop momentarily. On higher difficulties, it's invisible at all times, so the easiest strategy to deal with it is to go to the top of the arena where it can't hit you and just toss grenades until it dies. If you want to tell me Infested Chopper is worse than any of that when you have Majin level trigger, I don't know what to say. As for the best ones, Argosax, the final boss of Dante's campaign. Its first phase is an amalgamation of all the bosses Dante fought throughout the game, and Griffin for some reason. It's not difficult, and it's one of those bosses where you can just dead zone and shoot, or have fun with it figuring out the best ways to take each of its heads out. On DMD, this fight becomes quite the challenge as multiple heads will attack you at once, but this fight really shines in its second phase, the Despair Embodied, Argosax's true form. It's an androgynous being that does different moves based on the gender they take form of. I have nothing to say other than it's a very fun and aggressive boss, where several attacks need to be dodged a different way, your openings of attack are short, but the fastest string Dante has gets the job done. Only issue with this boss is that it's stuck in DMC2. And now for the boss that many people who tried DMC2 never got to go against, Possessed Aureus. This is the final boss for Lucia's campaign. This fight totally makes up for how terrible Heihachi Mishima, Aureus' other encounters were, where he just sat there aura farming shooting his flimsy revolver while calling all his goons and secretaries to do his job for him. Instead, in this final fight, Aureus got some of Argosax's powers and takes on this, as described by Akeno, deep sea creature-like form. But call me crazy, he reminds me of a Resident Evil tyrant with the way he attacks. Anyway, this fight is peak. He has this gimmick where he fills the arena with energy orbs at all times, where you have to either dodge them or hit them to destroy them. He also has this wind-up move where he'll start shooting an energy beam similar to the one Majin has, or several projectiles with a wide range spread, so it's a 50-50. The cool thing about these attacks though is that you can stun him before he has to do them, and it's your safest opportunity to deal big damage, with the only thing in your way of course being the orbs. And its second phase is pretty weak. You can use Aerial Heart to melt him, or just get on top of him to attack normally instead of tossing knives all fight long. Needless to say, both of these boss fights have a banger OST. There's a lot to talk about this game that I won't go over. I only explained the combat mechanics and some bosses, and I didn't even talk about enemy design, which is a major weak point of the game, among other things. But also good things such as the environments. Even though levels are empty, some locations in the game can be quite captivating thanks to the art direction. In conclusion, I like this game. Do I recommend it? Hell no. Unless you're that much of a DMC junkie. The point of this video isn't to change your mind about DMC2 or to make it seem like a good game. It isn't. But even bad games can be fun and explore great concepts. The game had a lot to offer that unfortunately was just poorly executed, but it was very influential to the rest of the franchise as a whole. It introduced Bloody Palace, which turned into a fan favorite minigame in later titles, so to call DMC2 the worst piece of crap to ever disgrace the video game industry just feels slightly disingenuous to me. And in the end, the tragedy that is Devil May Cry 2 was necessary, so that the franchise could flourish into what it is today. Thank you for watching.